Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome here in Lucerne at the Swiss Museum of Transport. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to hold the first webinar of the IATM series. The board of directors of the IATM decided, instead of physically meetings, to hold webinars during the whole 2021. Here in Lucerne, we're going to tell you the story about this historical vessel called battle steamer Rigi. You will learn about history and you see what we're going to do in the near future. COVID is the topic of the day, of the month, maybe the next years. We show you how we do this reconstruction work under these special circumstances. The next hour, we will have in general 3 chapters. First, I'm going to tell you some facts and figures about the Swiss Museum of Transport. Then you learn about the history and the restoration work of the historical paddle steamer Rigi, who was built in 1848 in London. And then have you the opportunity to ask questions. On our chat function, we are really happy to give you answer to everything you would like to know about the Swiss Museum of Transport and the restoration work here in Lucerne. Now, Chapter 1, Facts and Figures about the Swiss Museum of Transport.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next few minutes I would like to give you a short overview about the Swiss Museum of Transport. Is it called Verkehrshaus, House of Mobility in German, and the house means that we are also quite strongly focused on future topics and not only watch backwards what the means of museum is quite often interpreted with. On the first slide you see in the back the city of Lucerne, the Lake Lucerne, and the 40,000 square meter venue of the Swiss Museum of Transport. We are covering all modes of mobility: trains, cars, lorries, bikes, airplane, space. We've got an art museum as well, cable cars, everything. Quite important is our open space in the center called an arena. At the moment there are just 4 helicopters, they landed there. We use it for multiple purpose, old-timer cars, lorries, whatever is just on the program. The next slide actually is a short overview about facts and figures. 2019 we sold about close to 1 million tickets, and in the center of the slide you see members. Members means that Swiss Museum of Transport is organized as an association, and we are happy to have close to 40,000 fans of the Swiss Museum of Transport. To run this house on a 365-day base, we need about 235 employees, and we run 3 restaurants, so we need quite a lot of restaurant staff as well. We're also pleased to have quite a high self-financing figure, 85%. That means that we only get about 50% of governmental money. Gives us a lot of freedom, but it's quite hard to earn this money on the market or together with companies on the 5 pillars I just gonna show you. Our 5 pillars philosophy on the next slide means that we have quite an attractive museum. We run a film theater, the biggest screen in Switzerland, a planetarium, Swiss chocolate adventure, and a conference center. We have about 3,000 school classes in a year. It's a really nice group where we can motivate them to learn jobs, to study in the field of mobility. In the conference center on the right-hand side, we have about 900 events, exhibitions, and congresses in a year. That helps us to finance the museum. Next slide, just a view into the film theater, IMAX standard, biggest screen in Switzerland. We use it quite often for events, conferences as well, because it's such a wonderful installation and a great screen. I'm really happy also to have the biggest planetarium in Switzerland and quite one of the most advanced one worldwide. We produce our own shows and share it with other planetarium worldwide. We just had a premiere with quite a nice show about climate, together with the biggest planetarium in China, in Beijing. On this slide, actually, you see the inspiration by museum facilities from the conference center. We used the aviation hall for a nice round table dinner. You don't need any decoration. The real original objects give you a wonderful atmosphere. You can combine it with a short introduction about the museum, about some certain airplanes, about their history, and then you have, together with a nice wine and a nice dinner, you have an unforgettable evening. You may think, what has Swiss chocolate with transport museum to do? It's a good question. Actually, we were looking for a topic to attract a bit more foreign visitors, especially Chinese and Indian guests. And we found out that the topic of logistic is a really nice one. And we showed a logistic chain on the history of chocolate and how became Switzerland a chocolate country. And it's all about logistic. The coconut beans grown in Ghana, Africa, they have to be moved to Switzerland. We transform it then together with sugar and other ingredients to a nice chocolate bars. And then we have to deliver these chocolate bars maybe to a petrol station outside Adelaide. And that's all about logistic, lorries, trains, aircraft and things like that. And that's a nice combination of a sweet topic together with mobility and logistic. The last slide actually shows you the facade of our street mobility hall with real street signs, so everybody knows directly what's maybe inside of this building, all about street mobility. And this yellow balloon on the left hand side, actually we quite often have some starts of heat air balloons. It's also a kind of mobility and is quite attractive for visitors as well to see how a balloon is filled with hot air and is flying off of our venue then. So I hope I could give you a short overview about the Swiss Museum of Transport. We're really happy to run this place and to move forward. And if you have some questions, don't hesitate to ask us on the chat or pop into our website or send me an email. Thanks for your attention.
Back on today's topic, paddle steamer Rigi. Come with me and have a look inside. Welcome down on the bottom of this historical vessel paddle steamer Rigi. In front of this historical boiler who powered the steam engine for more than 104 years, it's a wonderful technical piece of history. I'm looking forward now for the interview with my first guest. It's Daniel Geissman. He's responsible and head of the exhibition and the collection at the Swiss Museum of Transport here in Lucerne. Wonderful piece of history, 104 years in service on Lake Lucerne. Now a lot of work, hundreds of hours you spent with your team in renovation. Why did you decide to start this work 2020 during COVID?
I think it's the best situation for us to work here in the boat. We don't have visitors and we can work as we like, and for us it's the best situation actually to make a good progress in this boat.
Was it difficult to get glasses and screws because a lot of companies were closed during this time?
Yes, it's a little bit difficult, but we feel many partners from us wait for works, for interesting works, and the doors are very, very open now in this time, and the people is very happy when can he do something, especially for the Verkehrshaus.
Okay, it's good to know that we have got a good name on the market. What is actually to do? I already mentioned earlier that we are planning to open this vessel to the public at Easter time this year. You think you will finish this work till then, or is there some problems in front of you?
I think we have 2-3 problems, but we find solutions for this. And our motivation is always the time, and the people knows exactly when we will open, and I know we will work 24 hours and we will be ready when the visitors come to us.
It's great to know that my team is so highly motivated. If they once started the project, then I'll know that they will finish it on time. Thank you, Daniel, for this interview.
Thank you too.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to look back. This paddle steamer was 104 years on service on Lake Lucerne and drove 1.6 million kilometers. A lot of stories happened during this period of time. We already produced a brochure, a little booklet, where you find a lot of pictures and all historical issues. Have fun and learn more about this boat.
I would like to introduce you to some facts and the history of the steamship Rigi, certainly one of the key objects in the Verkehrshaus, the Swiss Museum of Transport. My name is Jean-Luc Rickenbacher. I am one of the curators here at the Swiss Museum of Transport. Ships and navigation are two of my exhibition focuses. Some of you may know me already from our last IATM meeting in Berlin in 2019 that I appreciated very much. So let us quickly have a look at this photograph taken by the famous French photographer Adolphe Braun in 1861. Here we see the Rigi in the harbour of Lucerne. The Rigi is a flush deck vessel. That means it is a steamship with one large deck and no superstructure. The deck is used as a large cargo space for the wares and animals that were transported on the ship. So at the beginning, the transportation of goods and on Lake Lucerne was the main objective of the Rigi. In a time when road construction was still simplistic and road traffic sparse, it played a key role in carrying freight over the Gotthard transport axis from Basel to Milan and from Rotterdam to Genoa. The Rigi is the oldest preserved flush-deck side-wheel vessel worldwide. The steamship itself was not constructed in Switzerland. It was constructed in 1847 by Ditchburn and Maer in London and brought to Switzerland in 1848. The reason for this was that the only Swiss shipbuilding company, Escher Wyss, had an exclusive contract with the rival company of the Post Steamship Society on Lake Lucerne at this moment. So the Post Steamship Society had to order the ship abroad. The transport of the ship hull was a big challenge at this time. It was transported by ship to Rotterdam and then to Strasbourg and continued by train from there. For the final stage, it was even transported on horse carriages. And all of this was accomplished while Switzerland was in the middle of a civil war between Catholic and Protestant cantons, which interrupted the transport various times. The Rigi has also made history in tourism. In 1863, it carried the guests of the first travel group that made its way across the Alps, organized by the famous British pioneer Thomas Cook. At the end of the 19th century, tourism became more and more important for Switzerland, the city of Lucerne, and also for the steamship Rigi. Instead of goods, carrying tourists and bringing them from one place to another became her main purpose. With the construction of the rack railways to the mountains Rigi and Pilatus, as well as the rise of other touristic destinations like Bürgenstock and Vitznau, central Switzerland became one of the touristic hotspots in the world. To satisfy the more sophisticated requirements of the tourists, the appearance of the ships changed. In 1905, she got a 7-meter-long saloon for the first-class passengers and was upgraded afterwards several times. The Rigi and her crew experienced a lot together, from thunderstorms to crashes with other ships. During the Second World War, in 1940, the Rigi was the oldest ship on the fleet and had, with 34,467 kilometers, the longest mileage traveled per year. It was taken out of service in 1952 and waited for the dismantling. Shortly before, Alfred Waldis, the founder of the Swiss Museum of Transport, managed to save the Rigi. One special reason why Alfred Waldis decided to bring the ship into the museum was a personal one, because his father served on the Rigi for many years. In spectacular fashion and surrounded by a lot of spectators, the ship was transported to the museum.
Die Vierwaldstätter Seeflotte hat die Rigi, das älteste Dampfschiff der Schweiz, aus dem Dienst entlassen. Das Schiff wird nicht abgebrochen, sondern nur teilweise zerlegt, um nachher wieder zusammengestellt zu werden. Das stolze Kamin muss sich dabei Ungewohntes gefallen lassen. Die sonderbare Dampfmaschine wird mit größtem Respekt behandelt. Die Kapitäne, die auf der Rigi gedient haben, erleben jetzt die sonderbare letzte Reise ihres Schiffes. Eine Reise auf dem festen Land, die vom Luzerner Bahnhof G über die Seebrücke führt. Dem Schiff kann dabei nicht viel passieren. Die Brücke hingegen wird aufs Äußerste belastet und es gilt, das Riesengewicht peinlich genau zu verteilen. Nach langwieriger Überfahrt landet die Rigi im neuen Verkehrshaus der Schweiz, ihrem letzten Hafen. Hier wird man sie in einer Betongrube verankern und wieder voll ausbauen. Das alte Schiff wird ein Prunkstück des neuen Verkehrsmuseums sein.
At the opening of the Swiss Museum of Transport in 1959, the Rigi served as the museum's restaurant, located in the very middle of the exhibition. She quickly became one of our visitors' most favored objects. Most of you will know that the handling of a ship on land is much more difficult than in the water. During the flood in 2005, the ship was ironically one of the most damaged objects in the museum. Because of a severe mildew infestation, the ship had to be completely restored. Some years later, the Rigi was once again heaved by a giant crane to the navigation exhibition hall, where it stands until now.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to give you a short overview about our shipping hall. On my right-hand side, Daniel looks a bit dirty. What's happened to this motor?
Yes, it was very long dirty. It was in the ground of the sea around 100 years.
Right.
And we make a big exercise in diving and pull up this motor. It's a solar motor around 120 years old. And we think we make conservation in this condition. But it's more interesting for the people to see this motor as the other on left or the right side.
I think it was a big exercise to bring it up from the floor.
It was
70 meters, or I remember.
It's about 74 meters, and we work around 3 years for this project
Wow,
to give a new life here in the museum.
Wow, impressive. Now we are standing in front of the steam engine of the paddle steamer Rigi. Special on this steam engine is that the cylinders, those two, are oscillating. Mainly on paddle steamers on sea or on lakes, the cylinders are flat, horizontal and not moving. Because it was quite a small vessel, they placed the machine as compact as possible, and that was the outcome. It's a wonderful piece of technique, built 1893-94 and still existing. Are you planning, Daniel, to bring this engine back to the vessel, or will it stay here at the exhibition?
We don't have the place in the ship, and we think it's better for the motor to stay in the exhibition hall. The conditions in the boat are not so perfect for a so special piece. It's a really Swiss quality, very old, and is unique. And we think it's better we can see the motor here in the exhibition hall.
Okay. If somebody would like to ride a steamboat with an engine like this, it's possible in Dresden on the Weisse Flotte. Paddle steamer DS will run every year in the summertime. It's a wonderful experience. Coal and oscillating the cylinders is a once-in-a-lifetime experience in Dresden, in Germany. Daniel, a wonderful exhibition, modern sailboats, boats and steam engines so close together. What's the idea of showing sailboats?
Yes, sailboats is a very important sport and activity in Switzerland. And the beginning of the foiling was started here on at the Vierwaldstättersee with the Supramar. This was the very first company with German engineering. They are building the first boats, the foiling boats, here around 20 kilometers near from the Verkehrshaus.
Wow, interesting. Here some models, I think. Yeah?
Yes, some boats go to Italy, to the Commersee, and here you can see always the boats from Switzerland, the very first boats with foils. They are produced here, very near from the Verkehrshaus.
That's typical actually for the Swiss Transport Museum. We always like to show achievements, technical achievements of engineering, of technique, and it's a nice job we have to do, we can do to prevent things like this, to show our youngsters, the next generation, that if you learn something, if you study a nice topic, you can engineering, you can do something for the future of mobility. That looks like a submarine, Daniel. Would
Yes.
you dive with this type?
No, I don't go. It's a boat for two persons.
Wow.
And you can imagine it's a little bit the story of the yellow submarine here in the house. And this was a man without any know of construction, and he built this in his free time. And the boat is constructed only with experience. The man don't know all the physics around the diving, and he learned always step by step to build this small submarine.
And it did work. It
worked. The last time he made the control of cables in the sea,
Okay.
and this was very long time in use here in the sea.
Okay, great. Here actually we enter a very interesting piece of history. It's another submarine. A submarine constructed of the family Picard. What's this piece of history, Daniel?
Yeah, the first piece near from us is the Messersgraf Auguste Picard. Is the biggest touristic submarine. It's 32 places inside, and was building in Switzerland, in the canton Wallis, and is the biggest every building built a submarine for tourists.
Wow.
And the original stay by us in the arena, And this was a project too from the Verkehrshaus to make a very big renovation. And now we can present the boat in the same condition as 1964 in the Expo here in Switzerland.
That's a crazy story too, actually. Switzerland builds the biggest submarine and we have no sea access. That's funny. But the other submarine behind is also interesting, Daniel, I think.
I think it's more important, it's more interesting, is the Batiscaf, is from the same family, from Bütikofer. The builder of the Mesoscaf was the co-pilot in this military mission from America, and he goes around 11 kilometers on the ground in the Mariengraben. He was the very first boat, the very first submarine goes in this altitude.
Great, thank you. Here you see some old equipment for diving. It looks quite tricky, and I don't think I wouldn't wear the shoes for diving.
Yes, the shoes was very strong, very heavy for the ride. And 2 days, the working people in the ground use a little bit the same equipment as you see here in our house.
A lot of things about ferry sailing. That's a nice piece as well. A ferry, passenger ferry, the city of Bâle. It's on the border to France and then Germany. And it works actually without the motor. It uses just the stream of the river. And if you have got the right angle to the river stream, it moves forward on a cable. If you're once in Bâle in Switzerland, it would be a nice experience to have a ride on this ferry here.
Exactly, and now we are on the construction. We make some new parts, and later, in the beginning of the March, we can present the boat in new condition for our visitors.
That's great.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of things to do, actually. Everything piece you put in your hand, you see some new work, actually.
This is so. Every object, we have around 14,000 objects. For every object, we can do something. Sometimes I must close my eyes. I see so many things, and we can't do all together.
And in the rear, actually, in this white ring, you see outboard motors. Outboard motors, that's a gift from a collector of outboard motors. Yeah. And quite often it happens that somebody gives us an email or give us a phone call and tell us, would you be interested in 80 different types of outboard motors?
Yes, the call begin with the question, are you interested for some motors? And then we see all the collection with, you say this, around 80 pieces. And this was a very good chance for us to have a full collection of this type of motors.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you could spend a day in the whole Verkehrshaus here in Lucerne, wandering around, learning and have fun. Our main topic is actually edutainment. Quite often you can touch something to try something out. And I once again invite you, after COVID, wherever you live in this world, you're more than welcome to come to Lucerne, and I will offer a cup of tea or a cup of coffee when you come after this webinar here in Lucerne. Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, after this tour through the shipping hall, we just showed you the first floor. There's a big hall with 3 other floors, actually, with a lot of historical and new topics. We are standing here on a place where usually visitors are not allowed to stand on. It's the engine bit of another historical paddle steamer on Lake Lucerne, of the paddle steamer Dampfschiff Pilatus, another nice mountain nearby. We are talking today about the Mount Rigi, and all the vessels and ships on Lake Lucerne. They have names mainly of countries. We had the Germany, we had in Italy, we had the France, and we have some boats named by mountains. This vessel was driven by real coal. That's the reason why I have got a piece of coal in my hand. Now we got a lot of very interesting questions. Thanks so far for this Q&A. We'll give you the answer after the look over the shoulder of the curator. You already seen on the show so far. Jean-Luc will tell you now what we're gonna do with this vessel after the reconstruction and how our visitors are getting in contact with this nice piece of history, and will be a new highlight 2021 here at the Swiss Museum of Transport.
In the second part of my presentation, I would like to present you the new exhibition we are working on inside and around the Rigi. For a quite long time, she unfortunately remained inaccessible for the visitors. With the reopening, we want to underline the importance of the ship for the national as well as the international history of transportation. We want to give a new quality to this key object of our museum. We are restoring the appearance of a flush deck vessel. The approach is a very interactive one, with the visitors being able to go inside the hull. Let's have a look at some visualizations and some pictures of the new Rigi. Thus they do it in a way how people did it in the 19th century. They go inside a little boat on the water tube and float one round. Even entering the Rigi is being reinvented. There's an artificial river around the ship, a water tube, through which the visitors can take a ride on little boats. This implementation is an homage to the water tube called Schifflibach from the Swiss National Exhibition 1939 in Zurich, where the visitors could also do something very similar. At the end of the water tube, they can enter the ship in two ways. Either the easy way through the first floor of the exhibition hall, or the more adventurous one, climbing a sea ladder up to the entry. Behind the ship, we are hanging up a giant picture of Lake Lucerne, the domain of the Rigi. Further parts on the exhibition are original objects or reconstructions, like the two paddle wheels, the figurehead, the lifeboat, the steam engine or the steam boiler. We also have some of the original plans from the shipbuilding company Assosiation on display. They include the plans for the paddle wheels, the general plans of the ship and the steam boiler. As I said in the first part of my presentation, Lake Lucerne is surrounded by many well-known sites, as for example the mountains Rigi and Pilatus with their unique rack railways and the Bürgenstock hotels. We want to show them to the visitors by displaying historical tourism posters next to the water tube. So when the visitors make their tour on the boat, they are surrounded by historical artworks. In addition to these more historical parts of the exhibition, we also portray modern ship and boat building in Switzerland. At the shores of Lake Lucerne, just some few minutes away from our museum, we have, for example, the shipbuilding company ShipTech, which constructs high-quality naval vessels to this day. or the companies Bosch and Petrozzini at the shores of Lake Zurich, with a long and old tradition of boat building. I hope that I could give you an overview of the new exhibition surrounding the steamship Rigi. We are looking forward to open the exhibition for our visitors and show it as soon as possible also to the members of the International Association of Transport Museums.
Yes, dear friends from IATM community, welcome back live here at the Swiss Museum of Transport in Lucerne. To finish up the third chapter now is a Q&A session. I'm really pleased to see on my screen beside me, together with Daniel. You already met him during the show. We're standing here and asking you some questions you gave to us and give you the answer now. One question we got from Mike, question is how many people work on the maintenance? Daniel, do you have a big crew or how many people are at the moment on the boat?
This depends a little bit the situation. I think 2 or 5 persons, but always when it's necessary to work something, the people is ready for this.
Okay, it's quite a small boat, so you would stand on your hands, each other, and so on. The second question, actually, from Mike was about in the film you've seen the 1959, the Rigi as a restaurant. And the question is, why did people sit outside in a restaurant with these orange shelters and not sitting inside?
This is a question of the places. Inside we had not so many places, and then we have more place in the outside. And in the saloon of the ship, it was always a restaurant in high quality, and for special people, this place was reserved.
Thank you for this answer. There's quite an interesting question from Sam. Is it still the original engine, or what's happened to it? And can you tell me a bit about the engine? That's the black one we've seen in the film.
The engine we have is the second one. Is a Swiss product from Schweiz. The first one we don't have no more information about the producer and the performance. We don't find nothing in the books, in the documents we have. Is only the boat was produced in London.
Good to know. Then Mike asks once again a question: how do you organize kitchen and sanitary facilities? I would like to give an answer. If you have a boat who was running 104 years, you have a lot of different shapes of this boat. They were always changing, and we had to decide which type, which time period we're going to show for the near future. And we said everything would be reconstructed in wood, would be not the original. And we said we're going to use just the real pieces, the real iron pieces, and so we reduced it to the max. And there will no big kitchen, there will be no sanitary facilities. There in the nearby houses there are a lot of, but the people can see how it was constructed. And we are really pleased that we got every year several dozens of visitors, mainly from the northern country, from Finland, Norway, Iceland, who just traveled to Switzerland to see the construction of this vessel. It's really handcrafted, and it's nearly nowhere you are able to see a ship on this shape. The next question is, how do you plan digital workshops for a group? I think it's meant by Fabian during COVID. Do we have webinars like this, and how do people can get access to this information?
We make some guides in digital version, and the people can look this in YouTube and other streaming platforms. And this is for us very important now to give a sign from our house. When we restart, the people knows we make so many new things, and the people is very motivated to have a look of the new parts in the museum and in the exhibition.
Thank you, Daniel. The other question goes plus minus in the same direction. How do we can give this information, this really interesting information to our visitors? And that's a really tricky question. If I do guided tours and tell the people that we have got a steamboat here built 1848 in London, it was difficult to move to Europe, everybody is standing on my mouth and listen to me. But if I'm not standing in front of the boat, it's really difficult to give this information to the visitors. And we're going to try different modes. Daniel already informed about guides. And then we maybe think also to do some theater to bring back the people, the visitors to this period of time with clothing and things like that. So we will try out the best way to bring the information to our visitors. Then Sam, that's really our aim actually, to use this strange period of COVID to bring some project forward with no visitors. We have more space around the boat. It's not dangerous. Normally we can just work with heavy lorries and cranes before 10 o'clock in the morning, and now we can work actually the whole day. That was also the reason why we pushed forward with this project. Then another question is how do you make accessible requirements? How do you implement them? Yes, we have some. Daniel, maybe you can point out this.
We have some pieces from different generation of the boat, and we make 2 points in the exhibition hall, and we were presenting these objects to the people and explain all the usage from this. This is not in the boat itself, but is in the exhibition hall at 2 points for the visitors open, and they can look and touch the pieces.
To add, some pieces are of real old, you imagine, out of wood, and it's really difficult to place them outside. All of you know, if you have a boat or a locomotive standing 365 days in rain, snow, cold conditions, it will rotten really easily. And so we had to find a way to keep this vessel outside. We are not in the situation of Vasa, or to build a whole building around this vessel. So we had to find a compromise. Those pieces, they can stand outside, the people can visit there, and then will be kind of a showroom with the original pieces from 1848. Okay. There's another question from Sam. When you're ready to finish. Okay. Can we broadcast him directly? Or? Hm? Ja. Kann man das vorbereiten? Okay. We are planning about 50 minutes of our webinar. We have had now 52 minutes. It's a bit over the time. I hope you had a good insight about what we do here during COVID at Lucerne. To add some information about the COVID situation, we had a really high number of COVID-influenced people. It's now going down a bit, but we still need to be closed till the end of February. We're going to use this time now for cleaning and putting the museum forward. Like Sam mentioned, it's great to open better than at the time we closed, and we are really thrilled to be ready at latest on Easter time to say hello to thousands of guests, and hopefully to motivate them to use this new facility of this historical boat with this little boat run around it. Have you got something to say?
No, it was a pleasure to present our project, and I think we can make a big enjoy for many people and visitors here in Switzerland.
Okay, now I hope if it's technically possible, I would hand over the microphone physically to London so that Sam can say some finishing words. Thank you all much to be my guests today. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you to my technique team. It was the first time that we had the opportunity to host a webinar. We learned a lot, and we hope you had fun. Take care. See you soon. Sam, take the mic.
Thank you, Martin. I hope you've got. Hope you can hear that. That's fantastic. Thank you very much to you and your colleagues at the Verkehrshaus for giving us a great insight into your wonderful museum. I wish I was there with you today, and that interesting restoration project of such a iconic steamship. And if we think of Switzerland and we think of the lakes, then you have to think of tourism and the 19th century and the great age of the steamship. And it's really good to have that insight. We have our intention is to do an IATM webinar on every month, and the next one is on the 25th of February, when we will go to Canada and see how they're curating their collections under COVID. And then a month later, on the 25th of March, we'll come to London and have a look at hidden tours of the London Underground and how we're turning our museum into more of a digital experience. And if your museum would like to join in with one of these webinars, we'd love to hear from you at IATM and include you in the future program. We're going to be doing once a month through the year. So a big thank you to Martin and to Daniel and to his colleagues at the Verkehrshaus. Thank you very much for this experiment, a very successful experiment, I think, this afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you all in a month's time. Thank you and goodbye.